military strikes on Israel. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it attacked dozens of targets, including military centres and air bases. Smoke has been seen rising over the skyscrapers of Tel Aviv after an aerial attack on the Israeli city. Explosions have also been heard in Jerusalem. Tonight's bombardment is in retaliation for Israel's strikes on Iran last night, which targeted military and nuclear sites. Israel said the attacks were vital to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. The country's spiritual leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, promised his country would inflict heavy blows in response. Well, this was the scene in Tel Aviv in Israel just an hour or two ago. There have been huge explosions in the sky over central Israel, although it is unclear what's from missile strikes and what is Israel intercepting them with its Iron Dome. Tonight, Israel says it struck a nuclear facility in Isfahan, and that is in addition to last night's strikes on the country's biggest nuclear facility at Natanz and also at Kermanshah. Well, our first report tonight is from Lucy Williamson, who's in Tel Aviv.
In bunkers and stairwells, they listened. To Tel Aviv, under fire from Iran. Defences scrambling above a city of civilians and military bases. From ballistic missiles, arriving minutes after launch. Impacts felt inside shaking buildings. For the third time tonight, missiles are being fired at Israel, fired at Tel Aviv. This is the response Israel was expecting. And all across the country, people are listening to the sound of Israel and Iran at war. Missile defense systems were also activated over Jerusalem. Israeli media reported several impacts across the country, including near military sites. A direct hit to this building reportedly left people trapped inside. Israel began striking Iran overnight. The nuclear enrichment site at Natanz, one of the first to be hit. A target for Israel's prime minister for decades, hit in what he said was a last chance to stop Iran making a nuclear bomb. Air defences, missile sites, nuclear scientists and military leaders, including the head of Iran's armed forces, wiped out in a series of nationwide strikes. An attack involving 200 fighter planes working with covert intelligence teams at a secret base inside Iran. These pictures from Israel's spy agency are said to show commandos firing at a missile launcher during this morning's attack. Their prime minister said the clock on Iran's nuclear ambitions had run out.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction.
In Iran, hundreds of protesters called for revenge. Iran's supreme leader said Israel had made an enormous miscalculation and that the consequences would bring it to ruin.
They should not imagine that they struck and it's over. No. They started this. They launched a war. We will not allow them to escape unscathed from the major crime they have committed.
Iran has also now reported unconfirmed signs of radiation at the Natanz nuclear site.
I call on all parties to exercise maximum restraint to avoid further escalation. I reiterate that any military action that jeopardizes the safety and security of nuclear facilities risks grave consequences for the people of Iran, the region, and beyond.
A former general in Israel's Air Force said there were limits to what military force could achieve.
I think we can say pretty much easily this was the most complicated and actually complicated, probably dangerous operation that Israel ever did in its history. We have a huge military success, a huge one. Okay, what's the next step? Are we going to transform it to something that will say, okay, the region is safe for the next 50 years, not having any nuclear threats from Iran.
Tonight, Israel was still striking across the country. This explosion filmed in West Tehran. Others reported at nuclear facilities in Isfahan and Fordo. Israel says Iran was secretly building a nuclear bomb. Too big a risk, it said. But Iran may now decide that negotiations won't protect it from attack, and that a nuclear weapon will. Well, the alerts have been lifted for now in Tel Aviv, but Israel's attack isn't over. There's a drone just flying above us here, and the threat, of course, hasn't gone as well. Israel's Prime Minister tonight had a message directly for the Iranian people, saying Israel's fight was not with them, it was with their government. The time has come, he said, to stand up for your freedom from the evil and oppressive regime. And that strengthened the view that some people here have, that Benjamin Netanyahu's goal is not just to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, but its regime as a whole.
Thanks so much, Lucy Williamson, there in Tel Aviv. Let's assess the situation in Jerusalem as well. Our correspondent Ione Wells is there. What's the latest where you are, Ione?
Saw a series of drones fly over Jerusalem, followed by some big explosions and bangs. Now, it's not clear if those were the sounds of strikes or interceptions by Israel's defense system. Israel has said that the majority of drones and missiles that were fired by Iran were either intercepted or fell short. Now, minutes before that, we had all received this emergency alert. Sirens were going off here in the same way that they did at 3 a.m. this morning, urging people to go to shelter or remain very close to them. This was after Iran confirmed that it was launching retaliatory military strikes on central Israel after a series of Israeli strikes on Iran today. Now, for now, that emergency alert has subsided. People are being urged to remain cautious, but as the last 24 hours have evidenced, that could change again very quickly.
Ione, thank you, Ione Wells. Well, this isn't the first conflict between Israel and Iran, but it is the most explosive. The risks are huge. Our security correspondent, Frank Gardner, is here. Frank.
Well, Jane, this conflict is bigger, more extensive and potentially more dangerous than anything that's gone before. The targets hit range right across Iran. It's the biggest assault on that country since the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s. One of the principal targets was Natanz, around 200 miles south of Tehran. Tonight, the UN's nuclear watchdog says it's been destroyed. It was Iran's chief uranium enrichment facility. That's a process that can have both peaceful and military purposes. Tonight, Israel said it also hit a nuclear site in Isfahan. And in the western city of Kermanshah, new footage of Israeli airstrikes. Missile bases have been struck across the country. On top of this, key military figures have been assassinated. Major General Hossein Salameh, the head of the Revolutionary Guards Corps, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, head of Iran's armed forces, and Brigadier General Amir Hajizadeh, the head of the Revolutionary Guards Air Force. Also targeted, at least 6 nuclear scientists. So how is this being viewed by the Iranian public?
The mood in the country is really divided. Some people, they're supporters of the Iranian establishment. They are angry, they're furious, they want revenge. However, there are some other Iranians, those who've been repressed in the past 4 decades by the Iranian regime. They are quite happy that the top Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders are killed.
Now, back in 2015, Iran was enriching uranium to just 3.6%, enough for civil nuclear power. Today, it's 60%, closer to what's needed for a bomb. But it was Donald Trump, close ally of Israel, who pulled the US out of a hard-won deal to curb Iran's enrichment. Today, he's ordered more US naval forces to the Middle East, amid fears that Iran could hit US bases. And there's another risk, that Israel's operation could even backfire.
The military strikes from Israel are likely to expedite the thinking inside Iran about the fact that a nuclear bomb is the only real insurance that the Iranian leadership has against a major Israeli or US-led attack that targets the core of the leadership.
So look, in purely tactical terms, Israel, which, don't forget, is a nuclear power, has achieved military success. It struck deep into Iran and assassinated top commanders. But this isn't the end. If Iran's regime survives, it may well now race to build a bomb, setting off a nuclear arms race across the Middle East. Jane.
Frank, thank you, Frank Gardner. Well, Israel's attacks come as the US and Iran are trying to reach a deal on Tehran's nuclear program. Talks are meant to resume this weekend. President Trump has urged Iran to make a deal, warning of even more brutal Israeli attacks if it doesn't. Tonight, the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke with President Trump. The men say they agreed on the importance of diplomacy and dialogue to resolve this mounting conflict between Iran and Israel. Tom Bateman reports.
A superpower at sea to defend its ally. Tonight, the US confirmed it helped Israel shoot down Iranian missiles. This sharp escalation after President Trump had been erring on the side of diplomacy. As Israel attacked overnight, Washington warned Iran not to hit back at American bases, saying it wasn't involved. But by this morning, Mr. Trump was on the offensive, saying Tehran's hardliners had lost the fight to get their terms on the nuclear deal. They're all dead now, he said, and it will only get worse. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end.
In accordance with Rule 39,
tonight, the UN Security Council has been meeting in emergency session to discuss the crisis. Amid the calls for de-escalation, the Americans warned about further consequences.
No government, proxy, or independent actor should target American citizens, American bases, or other American infrastructure in the region. The consequences for Iran would be dire.
We strongly and unequivocally condemn the barbaric and criminal attack. A series of targeted assassinations were against senior military officials, nuclear scientists, and innocent civilians.
The Israeli leader has long pushed Mr. Trump for a green light to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Timing was critical after Israel destroyed many Iranian air defenses last year and wiped out much of the deterrent effect of Hezbollah on its own border. Mr. Netanyahu argued now was the time to strike. But Mr. Trump, via his envoy Steve Witkoff, turned instead to rounds of talks with the Iranians, meaning this close but often fractious relationship was under even more strain. Mr. Trump told the Israelis publicly and privately he wanted more time for talks, leading to a tense 40-minute phone call on Monday.
There's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out.
Mr. Trump said he was losing confidence in the talks, but as late as yesterday was still equivocating over an Israeli strike.
I'd much prefer an agreement. As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in, because I think it would blow it. Might help it, actually, but it also could blow it.
It comes in a region on edge. Some American embassies and bases are already partly evacuated. At home, Mr. Trump has been preparing for his big military parade. His hope now is that his allies' deadly pressure pushes Iran towards a nuclear deal on his terms. His opponents are already accusing him of enabling a reckless gamble, risking America getting dragged into a war with Iran. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Washington.
Well, in a moment, we'll get the thoughts of Lyse, Doucet, who is here with me. First, though, let's head to Washington and join Gary O'Donoghue. And that's one of the key questions where you are, Gary. Can the US avoid being dragged into this?
Well, the administration's position has clearly evolved over the last 20 hours. We started with the Secretary of State describing it as a unilateral action. Now today, Donald Trump talking about it being an excellent piece of action involving great American hardware. And indeed, we're now learning that Americans are involved in helping intercept these missiles coming in. It comes with domestic risks for the president. Yes, there's strong support for Israel, but there also is strong animosity to any further involvement in Middle East wars and the 40,000 US troops that are in the region. Now, Donald Trump, you know, he's always talked about promises made, promises kept, and politics is about the deliverables. Now, if you look at Ukraine, if you look at the hostages in Gaza, if you look at getting Iran to do a deal, I think this president is finding the process of delivering harder than he thought it would be.
Thanks, Gary. Gary O'Donoghue. And Lyse Doucet is our chief international correspondent, of course. And people watching, Lyse, will want to know what will happen? Where will this go now? But it is so unpredictable.
So unpredictable and so perilous. Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel is making it clear he's waited a long time for this moment and he's not going to waste it. We have seen in the war across the region over nearly 2 years now that the guardrails are off. So now Mr. Netanyahu is saying he wants to destroy Iran's weapons-making capability. What does that mean? How far will it go? All we know on day one is that it's going to take days with all of the dangers of escalation, both deliberate and accidental. But there are Iranian hardliners who also have been waiting to have a go at Israel. They believe they were held back last year, told to exercise restraint, and now they literally are calling the shots. So, day one, Israeli and Iranian civilians are being hurt and killed. There's growing fears about the danger of contamination and leakage. And finally, Prime Minister Netanyahu has also been making clear, as we heard in this programme, he wants Iranians to use this moment to rise up. Many do want to see the back of the regime, but many don't. And that, too, could be explosive.